Some things, when spoken, lose their power. It's as if the energy sustaining a purpose escapes through the words. Most people speak without realizing that words carry weight, and each phrase uttered can open or close pathways. Words build realities, but they can also destroy them. Many live frustrated without understanding why plans don't materialize, why love grows cold, why money disappears, or why inner peace seems so distant. The answer, almost always, lies in what is said, and in whom one chooses to listen to. Itzhak Bentov used to say that the universe responds to vibration, and sound is one of the most direct forces of that vibration. When one speaks too much, the field disperses. When one speaks with awareness, life begins to align. There are certain things that should never be told, not even to the most trusted friend. Not out of fear, but out of wisdom. Because what is sacred grows stronger in silence. Today you're going to discover why. Words are instruments of creation. They don't merely describe the world, they construct, shape, and sustain it. The narrator begins her reflection by recalling that every sound vibration carries a frequency, and this frequency interacts with the human energy field like a sculptor carving the invisible. What is spoken doesn't vanish into thin air, it reverberates, imprints itself on the subtle layers of consciousness, and returns in the form of experiences, coincidences, and circumstances. Those who understand language as a creative force begin to perceive that each sentence is a seed. When spoken with awareness, it germinates harmony and prosperity. When uttered unconsciously, it spreads disorder and resistance. Someone who says, "Everything goes wrong for me," doesn't merely describe a moment but reinforces a vibrational pattern that becomes self-sustaining. Repeated words form energetic pathways, and the more one travels along them, the harder it becomes to exit the same route. It's at this point that the narrator invites the audience to observe what they usually affirm about themselves. Many define themselves by their lacks, speak about what's missing, about what they can't achieve, and in doing so, they feed their own blockage. Words create identity. When someone says, "I'm unlucky," the energy field around them adjusts to this belief and begins to attract situations that confirm such an idea. And the same happens in the opposite direction. Words of confidence, gratitude, and certainty shape an atmosphere conducive to life's flow. On the mystical plane, the voice is a bridge between the internal and external world. Every word spoken is born from an intention, and that intention is energy in motion. That's why ancient traditions taught silence before speech, not as repression, but as a sacred space to discern whether what's about to be said comes from fear or wisdom. Silence refines the word, and the refined word creates more harmonious destinies. The narrator then deepens the reflection, showing that the unconscious use of words can become a true energetic saboteur. Words spoken in a tone of complaint, even when they seem harmless, are subtle invitations for more of the same. By constantly repeating, "I don't have time," the person distances themselves from opportunities that could bring them ease. By affirming, "Nobody understands me," they block access to others' empathy. Everything that is verbalized becomes an energetic signature. When a word is born from a negative emotional field, it attracts the similar, like an invisible magnet. That's why spiritual masters warn about being careful with what's said in moments of anger, because the sound of emotion shapes the vibrational structure of the environment, registering memories within it that remain longer than one imagines. Thus, awareness about the spoken word is the first step toward mastering one's own field of reality. Those who learn to speak with intention and balance begin to notice subtle transformations around them. Relationships adjust, opportunities arise naturally, and the heart finds a state of serenity that once seemed distant. The power of words is, in essence, the power to create worlds, both internal and external. But there are forces that, when misdirected, drain this creative energy, weakening life's flow. The narrator begins to guide the audience to understand that some verbal habits are like small poisons, almost invisible, that silently corrode the vibrational field of those who practice them. And the first of these reveals itself when someone decides to expose their plans before realizing them. The first thing that should never be told to anyone is, your plans. Every intention is born as an energetic seed, and that seed needs silence, darkness, and time to sprout. When a person talks too much about what hasn't yet manifested, they scatter the energy that should be concentrated in realization. The word, in this case, functions like a valve that releases vital force before its time. When a plan is shared, the brain interprets speech as if part of the goal had already been achieved. The mind experiences a sensation of anticipated pleasure, and this pleasure reduces the impulse to action. It's like lighting a fire before having enough wood. The flame consumes itself in the enthusiasm of words. Many projects die exactly this way, not from lack of talent or faith, but from excessive exposure. Moreover, there's an invisible field that moves when intentions are revealed. By sharing a purpose, it ceases to be a pure flow and mixes with the vibrations of those who hear, opinions, envy, disbelief, curiosity. All of this interferes. Even if no one wishes harm, the mere presence of others' gazes and thoughts disorganizes the original frequency of the idea. That's why ancient sages taught, what is sacred must be cultivated in silence. The secret protects creative energy. Silence is the fertile soil where the plan grows. When one speaks too much, focus is lost, and vital energy disperses in explanations and justifications. The plan stops being an internal flame and becomes a common topic. It's at this point that many get lost. They trade the power of doing for the pleasure of telling. Keeping your purpose guarded isn't hiding your dream, but preserving it while it matures. Each project has a specific vibration, and the more intimate it remains, the stronger it becomes. Speaking before time is like opening the cocoon before the butterfly is ready. The gesture may seem innocent, but it interrupts the natural process of transformation. When the plan is firm within the mind and sustained by the heart, only then can it be shown, not as a promise but as a result. Silence, in this context, is spiritual discipline. It trains the mind not to seek approval, not to need external validation. Those who remain silent about what they're creating strengthen their inner power and attract synchronicities that support manifestation. And when this first poison is neutralized, consciousness expands to perceive another field where words also need care, that which involves the bonds of the heart, relationships. Because there's a second poison that many feed without realizing, and it reveals itself when intimacy begins to be exposed to the world. The second thing that should never be told to anyone is what happens within a relationship. Love is a delicate energy, and when two hearts unite, they form a subtle field of vibration that needs to be preserved. This field strengthens in intimacy, in the silent gaze, in the exchange that only those who live it understand. But when the relationship is exposed, the bond loses part of its strength. What was vibration between two begins to be crossed by many different frequencies, opinions, comparisons, judgments, and even envy. Talking too much about the relationship is like opening the windows of a house still being built. The wind enters, dust spreads, and what was taking shape begins to weaken. Even when the intention is good, the simple act of commenting already disperses energy. When someone says, "My relationship is perfect," they create a field of expectation, and when they vent, "My partner disappointed me," they feed the vibration of pain. In both cases, what was intimate loses balance and begins to oscillate at the mercy of others' gaze. Love, to mature, needs space and silence. It's not about hiding, but protecting what's still establishing itself. People, without realizing it, absorb the energies from the stories they hear. An innocent comment can awaken envy, desire, judgment, subtle forces that interfere with the harmony of those who expose themselves. That's why spiritual wisdom always teaches. The energy of union must be guarded like a sacred altar, and the altar is not displayed, it's cultivated. Many relationships wear out not from lack of love, but from absence of boundaries. When every detail is taken outside, the bond dilutes. It's like trying to light a candle in the middle of the wind. The flame resists for a while, but ends up flickering until it goes out. Those who love consciously learn to guard what's essential, to nurture the connection away from the world's noise. True intimacy grows when it's lived with presence, not when it's commented upon. Excessive sharing makes the mind seek external validation. Am I right? Does the other understand? And in that movement, love stops being an experience and becomes a narrative. It's at this moment that it begins to weaken. Talking about the relationship, whether in a tone of pride or lament, always alters the vibration of the bond. The cure, in this case, lies in learning to guard. Guard the gaze, the gesture, the feeling. Speak less and feel more. When silence is cultivated, love becomes a field of expansion. And as one understands the value of this silence, a new level of perception emerges. The same care applied to love must also apply to one's relationship with prosperity. Because there's a third poison that slowly corrodes the energy of abundance, and it manifests when someone decides to reveal how much they earn. The third thing that should never be told to anyone is how much you earn. Money, on the energetic plane, is a form of vital flow. It represents the movement of exchange, valuation, and prosperity. When a person reveals their own earnings, they open the vibrational field of abundance to external interference. The energy of money is sensitive. It needs discretion to remain clean, flowing between deservingness and gratitude. Talking about how much one earns awakens comparisons, judgments, and often envy in others. Even when disguised, this energy weighs heavy. It projects onto the field of those who expose themselves, creating noise in the flow of prosperity. The universe responds to the vibration we emit. If someone speaks with pride, they attract the vibration of competition. If they speak with victimhood, they attract the vibration of scarcity. And this is how many disconnect from the frequency of abundance without realizing. Not because they earn little, but because they talk too much. Words have the power to program the unconscious. When someone frequently says, "I'm broke, nothing's left, money disappears fast," these phrases become internal commands. The brain begins to believe that living in lack is the natural state. Over time, the energetic field adjusts to this vibration, and money really does begin to escape more easily. The word creates the mold, and reality fills that mold with perfection. On the other hand, flaunting one's earnings also creates imbalance. When one speaks of earnings with the intention of proving something, the energy of abundance becomes contaminated with vanity. Money, which should be a channel of fluidity, begins to carry the weight of the need for recognition. At this point, the flow stops serving spiritual growth and begins to feed the ego. And the ego, when it takes control, subtly sabotages prosperity. It creates fears, distrusts, and the constant feeling that it's never enough. The true balance lies in treating money with naturalness, but with secrecy. It shouldn't be a source of shame or exhibition. It must be cared for like a sacred river that needs to flow without pollution. When one speaks less, the energy of abundance remains concentrated, strengthening the manifestation of deservingness. Prosperity likes discretion. It flourishes where there's humility and retracts before the need to prove something to the world. Keeping silent about what one earns is an act of spiritual wisdom. It's understanding that money is just one of the expressions of universal flow, and the more one talks about it, the more one imprisons its vibration. Silence, in this case, is a sign of inner mastery. It shows that the individual trusts their own worth without needing to affirm it. And when consciousness expands to this point, one perceives that the same principle also applies to pains and challenges. Because there's a fourth poison that drains the soul's energy even more silently, the habit of telling your problems to everyone. The fourth thing that should never be told to anyone is your problems. Venting to just anyone may seem like relief, but in reality, it's an energetic trap. Each time someone narrates a pain, a loss, or an injustice, they're reinforcing the vibrational field of the problem within themselves. Words, again, act as creators, and when repeated in a tone of complaint, They program the unconscious to remain in the same cycle of suffering. When a person tells their problems to everyone, they transform pain into identity. The discourse, "Nobody understands me, nothing works out, my life is difficult," repeats until it becomes an energetic signature. The universe responds to this frequency, sending more situations that confirm what is said. This is how the habit of venting to those unprepared becomes an unconscious ritual of self-sabotage. The difference between seeking help and lamenting lies in intention. Speaking to find understanding and comfort is healthy when done with those who can guide, a therapist, a balanced friend, a mentor. But dumping frustrations on any available ear creates what the ancients called vibrational contamination. The heavy energy of an open vent spreads and, at the same time, returns multiplied. Those who listen also absorb part of this vibration. And without realizing it, both become unbalanced. The one who speaks feels more weight by reliving the problem, and the one who listens feels drained. It's a cycle of energetic transfer that produces no healing, only exhaustion. True liberation doesn't come from incessant talk, but from silent observation. It's in silence that the mind begins to understand the hidden cause of its pains. There are people who transform suffering into companionship. They feel alive only when telling their tragedies. They make pain into a bond and, with this, push away the flow of transformation. Those who talk too much about their own problems end up clinging to them, as if they had value. And the more they speak, the further they get from healing. Keeping silent in the face of difficulties isn't denying pain, but protecting it while it's being processed. Words, in this moment, should only be used when they can build something, not when they serve to reaffirm the fall. Silence isn't repression, it's alchemy. It transforms dense energy into learning. Mature consciousness understands that there are moments when what needs to be said should be taken to the heights, in prayer or meditation, and not delivered to just any ear. Because not everyone has the structure to listen, and not every pain needs to be exposed to be understood. And when the soul learns to contain the need to speak about what hurts, it reaches a serenity that prepares the ground for the final teaching. There's a fifth poison that seems harmless, but is perhaps the most treacherous, the one that arises when someone announces their achievements before time. The fifth thing that should never be told to anyone is your achievements before they're consolidated. Every accomplishment begins in the invisible, as a vibration that materializes step by step. Talking about it before time is like opening a fruit that's still green. It interrupts ripening and compromises the flavor. The energy of victory needs to be kept in silence until it's complete, solid, firm in the field of reality. When a person prematurely announces what they're about to achieve, the brain feels the same pleasure it would have upon reaching the result. This illusory satisfaction causes the mind to reduce the impulse to action, enthusiasm disperses, discipline weakens, and the achievement that was near begins to move away. It's a subtle but powerful phenomenon. Speech replaces action, and the project gets lost in the comfortable zone of expectation. On the energetic plane, the same occurs in another way. By disclosing an achievement before time, the energy of the accomplishment opens to others' gaze, and with it come vibrations that aren't always aligned with your purpose. Envy, doubt, judgment, even when silent, create interferences that affect the field of manifestation. What was a pure frequency begins to vibrate irregularly, and the flow of realization loses strength. Ancient masters knew this. That's why they taught that every victory must first be celebrated in the silence of the soul, with gratitude and reverence. Only after the accomplishment becomes stable can it be shared. Silence, in this case, is both shield and catalyst. It guards the energy of the achievement until it's ready to sustain itself alone. Disclosing before time also activates the ego, and the ego, when it takes control, transforms learning into vanity. When one speaks to be admired, the focus shifts from evolution to approval. The vibration of achievement dissolves in the desire for recognition, and what should expand consciousness becomes food for neediness. It's at this point that many disconnect from purpose and return to the cycle of instability. True victory doesn't need witnesses to exist. It manifests through inner serenity, through silent gratitude, through the certainty that the universe responds to alignment, not exhibition. When an individual learns to protect their achievements, they create a field of trust that attracts even more abundance. The vibration of matured success is solid and resonates far, without needing words. And it's at this point that all the teaching comes together. The words that leave the mouth are seeds that shape destiny. Each one carries power to nourish or destroy. Those who master the word master their own field of reality. And when silence becomes wisdom, the being transforms into a conscious creator. But for this knowledge not to be lost as just another concept, it's necessary to understand what unites all these poisons and what they truly reveal about the power of consciousness. And it's at this moment that reflection expands, not just to understand what shouldn't be said, but to awaken what needs to be lived. Everything that is said returns. Every word spoken, conscious or not, leaves marks on the field of reality. And now that you understand this, you realize that true power isn't in speaking, but in knowing when silence is the strongest word. Each of these things that need to be guarded is a way to protect one's own destiny, to shield the energy that creates life. Silence, far from being weakness, is the language of the wise. It's in silence that the universe works in your favor. So before telling something, ask yourself, does this need to be said or just lived? The honest answer to this question changes everything. Because when you learn to preserve, the world begins to respect you in a different way. Prosperity approaches, bonds become more solid, and the mind finds the balance it always sought. Now tell me, have you been speaking more than you should? Or have you already learned the power of staying silent at the right moment? If this message touched you, subscribe to the channel and activate notifications. Here, you'll continue expanding consciousness and learning to use the power of mind and spirit to transform your reality.